Hey everybody, Kevin Schulthies back again. We are going to go through the second part of the our CHP policies. We just covered the Canadian nation policy kind of number one. So that went through general statements and loyalty and patriotism and freedom and multiculturalism and refugees and language and immigration and a variety of things. So number two, we are now going to, let me zoom in here. We are going to now go through, there we go, national sovereignty issues. So I'll go through each one and I will comment as needed if I agree or disagree or whatever, and we'll go from there. So general statements, we want to affirm Canada as a free nation. That's what I love, and we should safeguard Canada with all necessary things, right, to both protect our nation internally and externally, right, including offshore resources. The Crown, we affirm our allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen of Canada and her heirs and successors according to law. We affirm also that the Crown is chief political and legal symbol of Canada's sovereignty and independence. I couldn't care less, this whole thing about the Queen and respecting our allegiance back to Britain and the Queen. I think it's kind of dumb, not needed, old and outdated, and there's even talk if once the Queen passes, do we continue using her, or whether it's the Queen or do we switch to the Prince, Charles or whatever like that. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about it. In some ways, couldn't care less. It's okay to, acknowledge some of our past there, but it's just not needed. And she's been a long time symbol for sure. I think longest running patriarch, I think, almost of any nation, I think. So in some ways, it's like a big part of Canada's history, because Canada hasn't. We're celebrating our 150th birthday coming up here this July 5th or July 1st. This July 1st, 2017 is going to be Canada's 150th birthday. So yes, Queen Elizabeth has run her life as a big part of Canada's history, but I don't think it's that important to acknowledge that. But that's not a deal breaker for me or not. I couldn't care less. It's kind of a neat thing. Parliament, our parliamentary system, whether we have where we have the Crown, the Senate, House of Commons, and has proved, it says here, it's proved itself over the centuries to be stable, just, and conductive. I definitely have some suggestions on how to update some of that, and make sure that we actually have additional checks and balances. I have some strong opinions on how we should reform some of our government and go from there. So we'll see if some of these platforms deal with that, right? Let me zoom in. So national sovereignty and not globalism, right? So we need to make sure that we have a strong Canada, of course. World Court. The International Court of Justice in The Hague must not become more than a court of arbitration for international disputes. Overtures to strengthen the World Court by investing it with power of compulsory should be dismissed. I don't know too much about the World Court system and stuff like that, but that being said, there has been a giant push to kind of keep making countries all abide by a single central power and stuff like that outside of God and His already written biblical word. We should not have to oblige to any human kind of court system and stuff like that. So that is a potential worrisome trend. I don't know too much about it, so I don't have too much of an opinion, but we as Canada and other countries, we'd encourage other countries to follow biblical principles, and if they follow biblical principles and we follow biblical principles, then things will be a lot better off in this world. But it's when we deviate from those that there are issues. Okay, so foreign policies. We should have more independence and not necessarily be neutral on things. We want to affirm freedom-loving people, and we need to be careful not to have a positive stance toward communism or fascism, tyrannies, and a variety of those things. National defense. Okay, so this is where the CHP has a stance, and we'll see if I line up or not with it. We affirm that governments have a responsibility to build up and maintain a strong military preparedness to protect our citizens from threats, which may deprive them of liberties. We need to defend our freedoms, right? Our national defense must be vigilant and high priority, even in times of minimal tension. Okay, fair enough. We need to have a standing Navy, Army, and Air Force with the best cost-effective weaponry and resources, and maintain in such a number to be effective for Canada's interest. Okay, fairly general statement in saying that we need to have a prepared defensive method and standing armies. Okay, fair enough. We ally with any nation from a position of strength in defense of a free world. Okay, fair enough. We favor the pursuit of properly supervised military reduction of nuclear and biological and chemical weapons of superpowers. Okay, fair enough. Foreign commitment, and we should be able to preserve international peace and to provide assistance and services in domestic and foreign disaster situations. Yes, our army, if we have a army and there is a big issue, it is usually the army is in the best position to be able to be mobilized very quickly and to be able to serve in disasters areas, and we should have resources that are able to do that. We need to, I would say in general, we need to always be very attentive to the cost of those things, and be very careful that we're not policing the rest of the world when they should be policing themselves as well. We need to have domestic duties, right, that need to be making sure that we take care of the contraband, things sneaking in and out of our countries, and we need to deal with emergencies and whatnot. Okay, fair enough. In general, Canada's armed forces should be open to all applicants that are 18 years or older and in physical good health and not practicing unnaturally immoral lifestyles. Okay, recruitment should be on a voluntary basis in times of peace. Encouragement being given to those wishing to make a career of the service. Okay, conscription in a time of war should make provisions for conscientious objectors on religious grounds to serve their nation in combat roles. Okay, so if we really had to get back, if we were really in war, and it was against, and we had to get back to conscription, we would want to be able to bow out on religious grounds, and we haven't been there in a long time. That'd be very interesting. So defense, while supporting national defense, we declare ourselves against waste and inefficiency. We do not want waste and inefficiency. Fair enough. Esprit De Corps, where the spirit, if I'm even saying that right, Decor and morale of the armed services is influenced to a major extent by our history, tradition, and individual identity. On our formations and designations, uniforms, ships, things like that. And we try to maintain our pride in our historic things. Okay, roles of women. Without diminishing the worth of individual, government should respect the inherent God-given differences between men and women within the national defense of our country. Okay, the role of women in armed forces should be restricted to non-combat roles. Okay, that's interesting. I Don't know if I have an opinion on that or not. I'm sure there's a big amount of women that would be upset with that. And at the same time, I'm definitely for gender-heavy roles as well. There are things that are ideal, both mentally and physically, for certain women and men. And just in general, there are always exceptions. But that being said, there's also spiritual issues as well that should not be ignored, and they are part of that as well. So the role of women in armed forces should be restricted to non-combat roles. Very interesting. So that is the platform of the CHP, and I don't currently have an opinion on that. I would actually more than likely agree with that, but I don't know if that would be a big sticking point. I don't think that's going to be a tent pole of some of our policy and whatnot. So, but we affirm that Canada's civil defense should be strengthened and integrated with the military in order to assist national and local emergencies, public evacuation, contingency plans, civil defense. Okay, external affairs, globalism should be in no way a global political federation or otherwise compromise Canada's identity. Okay, interesting. Peace and liberty requirements peace and liberty requires security. Rejecting appeasement as a solution for long-term peace, we affirm that there can be no peace without personal freedom, and that it would be futile to strive for peace through pacifism or disarmament without taking into account man's rebellious nature. So this is huge. There can be no peace without a defense of it, without personal freedom. And we have to be very careful about what is our personal freedom. And this is where I'm going to probably strive at bringing attention to that. We need to read more. We need to do a variety of things more as individual people to learn about personal freedom in Canada. I think it is not being taught. It is not being on our news. It is not part of our culture where we talk about personal freedom. And therefore, it is slowly eroding. And just like there's the Statue of Liberty, there should be also on one side, there should be a statue of like responsibility, and on the other side, because without freedoms, or with freedom comes responsibility and obligations, and we need to look into that. Totalitarianism. We affirm that no state has the authority to abrogate basic God-given human rights, and we condemn the brutality and of right and left-wing dictatorships equally. The current suppression of basic human freedoms throughout the world should be condemned through diplomatic channels and the United Nations. For examples, nations should be pressured into honoring the Helsinki Human Rights Agreement. Canada has no choice but to cooperate with other freedom-loving states to preserve peace and liberty through strength until verifiable disarmament agreements can be reached that do not threaten our security. Okay, terrorism. Canada should not condone and give sanction or assist otherwise or cooperate in any way those involved in terrorism. Accordingly, Canada should have no dealing with organizations which engage in terrorism. Okay, yeah, we should not be involved. Pretty standard stuff. Sanctions. We consider sanctions to be appropriate in situations where human rights and things are being infringed upon. However, sanctions should be only used after extensive dialogue and when moral leadership has failed, and with careful consideration of additional consequences, right? Because if we do something, we try to cut off a country, that might hurt people more in the long run as well. Anyways, okay, applications of sanctions to a single nation among many with whom there are maybe differences. It's hypocritical, self-righteous, and politically unwise. Okay, interesting. Here's CHP's stance with Israel. CHP has always affirmed the rights of all nations to exist peacefully behind secure borders, and additionally Because of our commitment to the supremacy of God in the Bible, we affirm the unique right and mandate of the Word of God of the nation of Israel to enjoy peace and national security. This affirmation does not necessarily endorse every act of the civil government of Israel, but we do stand in opposition of nations and organizations who avowed purpose is to destroy Israel. So there are nations and policies out there that have an absolute policy to destroy Israel and just wipe it off the existence of the map. So we do stand against those types of things. We do stand for nations to be able to defend themselves behind a border and give them the rights to do that. So that's where we stand on Israel. Okay, United Nations talk, memberships. We affirm that Canada should retain its membership in the UN, okay, while continuing to support the United Nations. We must not let wishful thinking blind us to the organization's serious and costly defects, so we got to be careful. Foreign aid. Canada foreign aid programs must be taken with precaution against waste and abuse. We have seen where we throw a ton of money at a problem and it is completely wasteful and doesn't help out in lots of areas. People should receive help, emergency help, and foreign aid, and we should do our best to help develop a nation's economy, become viable, and work with them on best practices and whatnot, and encourage free enterprise and human rights. We actually want to encourage free enterprise. We do not want to encourage socialism in other countries or in our country. We all need to work. That is a biblical principle. If you don't work, you should not eat. And if there is the small percentage of us that cannot work or something like that, then you can have the proper mechanisms to encourage your community to be able to take care of those members. You want to not have a federal program. You want to have local programs that take care of those issues and encourage that. So restructuring our debt. We want to find ways to develop the nation's debt and redress their unfair way of destabilizing trade imbalances. Okay. Restructuring our debt. Yeah, that's a big thing. I'm huge on the economy and stuff like that. Okay. Types of aid. Canadian foreign aid should be consistent with primarily emergency and self-help programs. Disaster relief. No foreign aid should be given to nations unless there's evidence of people being directly helped, and try to minimize our influence. We do want to avoid and alleviate world hunger, but we need to be very careful about that. Distribution only to NGOs, and try to be non-political about it, and go from there. Canada should not be used as an instrument for propaganda or ideological systems, nor should Canadian aid be permitted to facilitate programs. Okay, so that is that. Let's see here. Oh, hang on, sorry guys.